Sébastien.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to join you for this 10th edition of SenZations. We'll need the beamer, so I don't know who is in charge of switching on the beamer. Or do we have a remote controller? This one?
Thank you.
This one? Yeah. Does it work? See some light. Yes. So welcome everybody. What I will just let first the beamer to switch on to see if we have the connection. Perfect. Just get rid of that. So my name is Sébastien Ziegler. I'm leading an organization named Monde International, which is at the same time a foundation and a research center. We are involved in several European research projects on the IoT, covering different dimensions of the IoT, from network protocols and architectures, so many based on IPv6, towards multi-protocol interoperability integration. And the project I will introduce is a project that we are coordinating on IoT and crowdsourcing. So we present you some new approaches, new ways to handle and to leverage an IoT, and in particular to support the research around IoT. So it may be directly relevant for your own activities. So IoT Lab. IoT Lab is a European research project. It's as many projects, European projects. It's a 3 years project. So we're just in the middle of it. We are almost at the end of the second year, so we still have 1 year ahead of us. And as any European research project, it's a project which is a collective effort, bringing together different partners from different parts of Europe, and sometimes beyond Europe too. So if you have contacts with other research centers, universities outside of Europe, it's possible to invite them in such projects. In our case, for this project, it's mainly with European partners. The objective of IoT Lab are to explore the potential of crowdsourcing together with IoT research and IoT infrastructure, in particular to see how we can combine crowdsourcing and IoT to enable more richer, more interesting research and experiments with more end-user interactions. There is also a will and a commitment to try to open the IoT research domain to more multidisciplinary experiment and research. What we do is to give you a kind of global picture of the project, and then I will present different parts of it. We have already in Europe, through the FIRE program, different experimental infrastructures which have been developed over the year across different research projects. So we have test beds in different universities, sometimes in smart cities, in different places in Europe, which have all their own history, their own architecture, their own structure and set of technologies which have been chosen for the implementation. And what we try to do with IoT Lab is, on one hand, to bring together different IoT test beds in Europe to enable their integration into a common platform together with end-user interaction, so crowdsourcing, crowdsensing. I will come back later on this aspect, and bringing them all together into a testbed as a service. And the idea is to enable researchers from different domains, from ICT, but also from social sciences, to be able to access to these resources, to perform experiments, and to lead new researches. We have a triple integration, as I mentioned, an integration between different test beds, physical test beds. There is an integration with the crowd, with the end users, as well as this integration with the test bed as a service. And with two specific focus in our case. One is to ensure that we are 100%, I would say 200%, compliant with the European standards in terms of personal data protection. So really to design a platform which enables at the same time direct interactions with the end users, granular data from the end users, and at the same time to ensure that personal data protection is fully protected and respected. At the same time, what we try to do is also to explore more specifically from the European research infrastructure perspective, how to enable these test beds, which are existing already, to become more sustainable financially. As you know, many European projects, we develop nice infrastructure, nice research infrastructure. As long as the project is running, we have enough resources, financial resources in the universities to maintain them. But when we arrive at the end of the project, what happens often that the platform are either switched off, we just unplug the infrastructure, or we leave it but without human resources to maintain it or to make it evolve. So one of the challenges of this project is with one of our partners, University of Southampton, is to analyze the economic model that could enable such academic test beds to be more sustainable in the future. We have, as I mentioned, different test beds. So you have, for instance, we have, among others, the University of Surrey with quite a number of sensors, actuators, which are deployed on the campus. We have a smart office test bed in Geneva. We have HEPIA, Smart HEPIA, which is a University for Applied Sciences in Geneva too, the University of Geneva itself, CTI Patras, and we have some of our colleagues from Patras who are in this room. And each of these test beds, what is quite interesting, have and has its own history, its own architecture. So we had to find a way to overcome the heterogeneity of these different test beds in terms of technology, in terms of architecture, in terms of APIs, database structure, and so on. And one way to integrate, I will not enter into too much detail on that, but is to leverage on IPv6. So this project, as many other projects, is capitalizing on previous projects, and we had another project on the use of IPv6 for the Internet of Things, named IoT6, and we managed to integrate those different test beds, even the ones which were not connected to IPv6 and which are no IPv6 providers, to be integrated through IPv6, which gives the advantage to allocate a unique and universal address to each and every node in the different test beds. So scalability requirements. Then the other element which is very important in this project, which is one of the key developments of this project, is this IoT Lab application, smartphone application. And the idea of this app is to enable two kinds of interaction. What we named crowdsourcing on one side, which is the I would say researcher to human interaction, so enabling the researcher to push survey, to collect feedback from the participants, to eventually communicate, dialogue with the participants, and on the other hand, to enable crowd sensing. So the possibility for the researcher, for the participants who are willing to share their data, to enable the researcher to collect sensor data from the smartphone. So for instance, temperature, accelerometers, and so on. And of course, as I mentioned it before, one very important element for us and for the European Commission is to ensure that it's fully privacy by design. That, again, the privacy rights of the citizens, whether they are European or non-European, are fully protected and secured. It means for us, and what we try to enable is really a kind of paradigm shift for IoT research. Traditionally, IoT research was focused on labs. It was performed in laboratories. You used to deploy some sensors to see how the sensors were working, if you had a good algorithm, if you could improve the algorithm, save some energy, improve the reliability, QoS, and so on. And that's very important. But if you really want to have solutions which will be adopted by the end users, you need to have the human dimension. You need to ensure interactions with the real end users. And the real end users will not have exactly the same expectation, the same reaction in different environments, including in Europe. If you are in a city or if you are in the countryside, you may have different reactions. If you are in certain countries, for cultural reasons, maybe people will react differently to personal questions. For instance, there are countries in Europe where people are more sensitive to privacy than others. So how do you handle that? How do you ensure that what you are developing will be adopted by the end users? Another paradigm shift which is important and that we try to enable through this project is to enable the experiments to leak out of the lab, to be really experiments that you can perform and implement anywhere. Pervasive experiments. The possibility to perform your experiment in a smart building, in a smart city, in the countryside, on smart agriculture, and really to enable these experiments to move outside of the lab, outside of the academic premises. A very good example is related to smart cities. If you want to develop new applications for smart cities, you have many issues you can address, and you need to test and validate your assumptions in a real environment. If you want to develop a new application for smart transportation, and if you try to do it in your campus, it will not be very relevant. You need to have real users, you need to have real feedback. And it's really this idea to combine two sets, or to address two sets of requirements. Technical requirements. So again, for smart cities, you have scalability, QoS, you may have portability, costs for the municipality. You have different, I would say, technical requirements that you need to address. At the same time, you need to ensure that you are addressing properly user requirements, the human dimension, the human parameters such as user acceptance, citizen satisfaction, resource allocation, customization to adapt to the different specific needs and requirements of your target group of end users. Another idea that we try to explore through this project, and we will invite you to test it and to help us to improve it, is to enable more bottom-up research process. So to change a little bit the research cycle. Traditionally, when you start a research, I don't know how many of you have been involved in research projects? Yes? How did it start when you had a research project?
Hard. A lot of meetings and setting up the parameters and research the new stuff that we want to build in the platform. And then after all, let's say a year of debating, we started making something.
Very interesting. So long set. And who gave the initial impulsion for the idea, for the research? Where did it come from? One of the professor? One of
Professors, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I work for the research center, but of the company.
Okay.
The reason for most of the research projects is the business case.
Okay. Okay. So business unit coming to you and saying.
Actually, there is a business unit, or there is a business manager who knows that the client will need something like this in the future, or knows that clients would like to have something in the future.
Okay. So it's very interesting because in both cases you have a more, I would say, top-down approach with people who will anticipate what the end user would need. So the business unit will anticipate, say, oh, probably we should do something like that because I've heard that the people, so it's interesting because there's a part of bottom-up, but nevertheless the decision to move forward will come from somebody from the hierarchy, from within the company, who will say, okay, you should work on that. And for the traditional academic research, it will be a professor who, with his goodwill, will say, okay, probably there is something interesting to explore in this domain. There is room for innovation. We should work on this topic. What we will try to explore through this project is to enable more bottom-up research model, to have a really crowd-driven research model, where we will enable the crowd to suggest ideas, research ideas, and to let the crowd rank these ideas, to see how the crowd itself perceive and estimate the relevance of the different research ideas. And based on that, then, only then, we will enable the researcher to pick up the best ranked ideas and to propose to implement such research projects. So it's really trying to experiment not only the technology for research, but the model of research, trying to find new models and to see if it works. Maybe it will be a failure, maybe it's utopist, but at least we will try to explore it and to see how it works. And one assumption behind it is to consider that if we enable the researcher to be closer to the end user needs, we can save time in the development and improve the matching between the research development and the end user needs and requirements. That's something we'll try to measure, to assess, to see if it's just an idea, if it's a theoretical idea but which is not confirmed by the fact, or if we manage to measure this relevance and this added value in terms of research implementation and development. As I mentioned before, one of the ideas for this tool is to keep it as a tool which supports multidisciplinary and cross-domain experiments. So not to limit it to one specific silo of the research, but really to enable cross-domain research teams and enable more open interactions. In the context of smart cities, there is the idea to use this tool to see if you can enable more citizens' participation and to let the citizen bring a certain number of suggestions, ideas, and to see how we can use the same tool for practical city management. That's something we will explore in the last year. And another example of experiments that we are starting right now is with the ITU. The ITU is currently defining a new standard for key performance indicator for sustainable smart cities. And in this context, we are trying to see how we could propose alternative KPIs based on end-user interactions. Because the current KPIs are based on statistics. So you have an issue of latency, because if you are using statistics which are published today, they have been collected 2 years ago, they have been synthesized, so you have a latency with the information, and you miss part of the picture, because you only have, I would say, technically based metrics that you can use for the KPIs. And the idea is, for instance, if you want, one of the objectives of this ITU SC KPIs is, for instance, to assess the level of social inclusion. And the idea would be to say, okay, we can, of course, try to analyze the Gini index and so on, but one other option is just to ask the citizen how they perceive the social inclusion or inclusiveness of the city. So to give you an overview of the tool, and afterwards I will pass the floor to my colleagues who present you the tools in their current status. But one fundamental idea is, first of all, to aggregate and bring together different testbeds from different research partners, to extend it with the crowdsourcing capacities and tools, to develop a testbed as a service on top of it, which will integrate and provide an fully integrated and user-friendly access to these different resources for the researchers, and then to enable extended local experiment. So really simply, if we focus just on this part, the possibility for a researcher in Greece to use and benefit from the IoT devices deployed in Surrey in UK and vice versa for their experiments, to enable distributed and pervasive experiment, what we mentioned before, so in smart cities, smart buildings, in different environment, and crowdsourcing-driven experiment, this idea of letting the end users trying to give the impetus, the direction, the orientation for the research. And finally, another element, we will not have time to discuss it very much into details, but there is currently an effort at the European level to integrate, federate, and standardize the way the different testbeds can communicate with each other. So clearly there is an effort to align our own platform with the Fed for Fire platform, which is another platform, in order to synergize with other testbed federations in Europe. So practically, what we would like to do is to invite you to download the app. So Nikos, in a while, he will join us, will present you the application, the smartphone application, to use it and to provide us with your feedbacks. There will be, by the way, we will invite you to submit IDs, to rank IDs, and I think we will synergize with the effort which has been initiated by the business track. And the idea is to enable you, as well as the crowd, those who will download the app, to rank the IDs from the others. So to see then at the end of the week which is the most successful IDs, and we'll have a surprise for the best idea, and you will see on Friday. So you can find the app on iotlab.com. We are just wait until the end of the presentation, because we are just uploading a last version with it's uploaded. Wonderful. So you can go on the website, iotlab.com or iotlab.eu, and you can find the app and you can install it on your smartphone. So thank you very much. Now I will give the floor to Alexandra. She will present you the testbed as a service, the current version of the testbed as a service. There's still some, the testbed as a service will evolve in the coming days and weeks, but you can already access it, register as a researcher. And after her, there will be a complementary presentation from Fanis from CTI on how you can access to the different IoT resources. And after it, Nikos will present you the smartphone application.